Downtown's dramatic transformation continues at a remarkable rate. Gentrification has brought hip new cafes, bars, and restaurants to old neighborhoods.
But many are concerned that the benefits of ongoing and future revitalization aren't being experienced equitably.
That development can lead to higher property taxes, forcing current residents out. And that's what's happening in Houston's 3rd Ward.
Gentrification is a phenomenon that has been taking the world by storm in recent years. It is bitterly debated and has caused conflict, but gentrification is nothing new. It's existed for decades and is among America's great debates. But what exactly is gentrification, and how has it affected America's cities? Gentrification, which started in the 1950s, affected many urban neighborhoods in the United States both positively and negatively, causing much debate between proponents and opponents of gentrification. The varying results of gentrification in communities have sparked cities to employ diplomatic actions of various degrees to better support their neighborhoods and residents by protecting against the negative effects of gentrification while still reaping the benefits. Before one can look at the current state of gentrification and its effects, it is first necessary to have an understanding of the implications of the word itself. Gentrification, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, is a process in which a poor area, as of a city, experiences an influx of middle-class or wealthy people. The term was coined by British sociologist Ruth Glass in 1964, around the time when it first started to occur. However, its roots trace back to the Great Migration, which started during World War I. African Americans, tired of discrimination and poor living conditions in the South, migrated to northern cities, which had a high demand for factory workers at the time. Many African Americans in northern cities lived in segregated areas. The areas were often poorly maintained, overcrowded, and were generally ignored by the government. In the 1930s, the government decided to implement redlining, a strategy which segregated urban neighborhoods. It forced minorities to live in poorer areas. This was done by denying residents who lived in poorer neighborhoods of loans to buy houses in wealthier neighborhoods. Groups such as the Home Owners Loan Corp created maps which gave areas a grade between 1 and 4. Areas graded 1 were considered neighborhoods with the most desirable residents, whereas a ranking of 4 meant an area had the least desirable residents. The lower an area was ranked, the less likely it was for residents to receive loans to buy housing in other areas. Redlining segregated American cities for many decades. In 1954, the Supreme Court case Berman versus Parker took place, laying the foundations of gentrification. In 1945, the District of Columbia had passed a bill which would identify poor areas of the city and redevelop them. The goal of the bill was to mainly improve the city cosmetically. The bill gave the city the power of eminent domain, or the ability to seize private property with monetary compensation. Berman, a business owner affected by this bill, argued that eminent domain simply for the sake of beautification was unconstitutional and violated the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution's taking clause. Berman argued that beautification did not fall under public use, and therefore the city taking his property was unconstitutional. However, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the city. This case created one of the major arguments of proponents of gentrification, who argue that because gentrification causes cities to improve cosmetically, it is constitutional and fair. A decade after the Supreme Court case, 1968 saw the Civil Rights Act passed. Part of this landmark bill was the Fair Housing Act. It banned previous discriminatory methods of urban planning, such as redlining. Many neighborhoods, which had been significantly poor due to redlining, now needed to be significantly improved. To many cities, gentrification was the best solution. Gentrification is a very complex process that can be hard to understand. To grasp the concept, it is simpler to think of a fictional urban neighborhood and apply the real-world process there. In this fictional neighborhood, the infrastructure is at best below average. Many of the people who live there are working-class citizens and therefore aren't very wealthy. But soon, changes start to occur in this neighborhood. Suddenly, the roads are being repaired. The parks start to look a lot cleaner. Older buildings are demolished to make way for more upscale residences. More expensive shops, such as Starbucks and Whole Foods, will start to show up. For the citizens who live in rented housing, their rent prices will go up. Many property investors will buy old properties and refurbish them, and to then sell them at a higher price. All this development starts to attract wealthier residents to this neighborhood. They move into the new residences and become a part of the community. Due to these wealthier residents moving in and the upward trend of development in the area, older tenants will start to be forced out due to unaffordable rent prices. This in turn will attract more wealthy residents. The demography of the neighborhood will begin to change. Before, what had been a community largely populated with minorities will start to become more white. The neighborhood as a whole will look entirely different, with many new shops replacing older ones, and the poor infrastructure being replaced with updated, better maintained infrastructure. This is the process that most gentrified neighborhoods go through. It is a gradual process that has a large number of effects, both positive and negative. In many gentrifying neighborhoods, the negative effects are apparent earlier than the positive effects. In the fictional neighborhood, diversity was lost as many minorities were replaced by white people, a phenomenon known as displacement. This phenomenon is happening in Logan Square, a real gentrifying neighborhood in Chicago. Between 2000 and 2019, Logan Square lost a significant quantity of the Hispanic population. Their vacant spot was taken by white gentrifiers. This was a huge loss of diversity, as many of the area's valuable minorities were lost, which opponents of gentrification argue takes away from the culture and uniqueness of the community. The positive effects of gentrification take more time to appear. In gentrifying neighborhoods, poor residents are generally replaced by wealthier residents. The residents can contribute more to an area through taxes, which can then be reinvested into the neighborhood to build parks, improve infrastructure such as roads, and other beneficial causes. This occurred in Logan Square between 2006 and 2019, as median household income increased by nearly 45%. The fictional neighborhood also saw new businesses start to open in the area, leading to business and therefore economic growth. Central Harlem experienced a similar business boom, with the amount of businesses growing by an astounding 99% between 2000 and 2015. These varying effects have sparked a very contentious debate that continues to this day. Sometimes this debate has had terrible consequences. In the 1970s, Hoboken, New Jersey was gentrifying. Landlords eager for wealthier tenants took to arson to remove their tenants in what would come to be known as the Hoboken arson waves. There were about 50 casualties from this devastating event, and nearly 7,000 Latino people fled the city. This isn't a standalone event. In 1988, people who had become homeless due to gentrification congregated in Tompkins Square Park, a park in New York City. The residents of the area, uncomfortable with the amount of homeless people in the park, called the police, who, after increased tensions between them and the residents of the park, caused a riot on August 6, 1988. Countless people were injured in this horrible event. In recent years, cities have tactfully used diplomacy in order to reap the benefits of gentrification, such as business growth, while preventing the negative effects, such as displacement. In 1980, the District of Columbia passed a law known as the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, TOPA. In 2017, the City of New York passed the Certification on No Harassment, or CONH. And in 2021, Chicago passed a law that aimed to slow displacement in certain gentrifying areas. These laws have all proven to minimize the negative effects of gentrification, whether it be lessening tenant harassment through TOPA and CONH laws, or slow displacement, like Chicago's laws aim to accomplish. These laws have all been put in place to avoid the consequences of the debate over gentrification, and so far, they have been largely successful thanks to the city's intelligent use of diplomacy. Gentrification has had significant impacts on America's urban neighborhoods since it began in the 1950s and 60s. It affects urban neighborhoods both positively and negatively, causing both business growth and added wealth, along with a lack of diversity and displacement. These varying effects led to a contentious debate that caused tensions to grow in many cities, such as Hoboken, New Jersey, and Tompkins Square Park in New York City. It caused diplomacy and the need for new laws. It has shaped and will continue to shape America's cities for years to come. No matter what anyone's stance is on whether gentrification is good or bad, there is no denying its place amongst America's great debates.